Hello hobbyists and welcome back. Today I want to talk a little bit about prop balancing. There are literally probably hundreds of videos showing how to balance props, and I'm not necessarily going to be showing you how to balance a prop, but some of the things that I have found that I have not seen in other videos that are related to prop balancing, and I wanted to share them with you because they have caused me a whole lot of headaches. But for all intents and purposes, I'm going to go ahead and show a video of how I balance these props. And the ones we're going to be balancing today are from APC. They are the 10 by 3.8, and these are the slow fly props. This is the P means pusher prop, which means reverse prop. But anyway, let's just get right into it. I haven't even opened this package up. I've already did the other three, and I have them mounted. And at the end of the video, I'm going to show you how I dynamically balance these on the motors and some of the issues that I've had. And I wanted to point that out so maybe it'll help someone else, because there is a lot of frustration when it comes into balancing props. I enjoy doing the work, I like doing it, but when you don't see results and all you do is chasing your tail trying to figure out what is going on, it gets really discouraging and really frustrating. And this is definitely what I'm going to show. I think will help a lot of people in balancing their props. So we'll just get right with it. I'm going to set the camera down. Okay, like I said, I haven't even opened these props up. I'm going to open them up and I'll show you exactly the issues that I had with these. Now, different props, different brands, they are a little bit different. But these particular ones, and I've kind of displeased a little bit because I've always been a really big fan with APC props, but I'm going to have to say these I'm not really, the quality of the blade is good, but when it comes to these adapter rings, I don't know what the word is for it. But one of the biggest issues that I had is, I don't know if you can see that, I apologize for the lighting. Let's see if we can get to where we can see this a little better. Right there. Of course, all props adapter rings have the molding on it. These are exceptionally horrible because of the molding that's left behind around the ring. That causes an issue in itself, and then also these aren't flat right here. If your adapter ring sits in your prop higher than your prop, that's not good either. So what I did to address this is I took them out, and some of the things that you're going to need is, of course, sandpaper. I used to use tape and hot glue, but I got to where I just sand my props now. Because I've gotten better results doing that. And another thing is an X-Acto knife or a razor blade of some sort. I use these because they are really sharp and have a really sharp point. So the two things you need. The first thing I do is I start by cutting the molding right here where it's off. Even if it kind of leaves a divot in this plastic, I'll be sure and cut that completely off, because we do not want this prop ring or adapter ring, when we install it in the prop, to be off-centered. This really needs to be completely centered inside the hub right here. So I just very delicately take a razor blade and try to scrape most of this, or cut most of this off. And I may putting just a little bit of a chamfer on it when I cut it, but I don't think that'll hurt anything, just as long as we make sure that we don't have any of this excess sticking out. But I will probably fast forward through some of this so that you're not completely bored with what I'm doing. Okay, now that I've got that somewhat close, the next thing I do, move this prop balancer out of the way. And by the way, before we get any further, this prop balancer, in my opinion, is the best that you get, the Drill Bro prop balancer. It's like 26 bucks. Don't mess with anything else. I've had several other prop balancers, and this one here has outperformed any that I've ever had. And for the price, I would just say don't even mess with the other ones. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to sand this prop ring flat, because there are some places in it that aren't quite completely flat. I just want to be sure to get a good flat surface. Sand this on a piece of paper with it just flat on the table. And this will help remove some of the molding that was when they actually molded these plastic rings. Try to scratch some of that off. Okay, and then the next thing I do is I'll take some more sandpaper and I'll kind of roll it up like this. Then I'll stick the ring inside of it. I use 320 sandpaper. It doesn't leave big scratches in your props, but yet it'll still remove some of the material fairly quickly. If I have some really bad out of balance props, I'll use a little lower grit, but 320 or 400 is pretty much what I use because it doesn't mar the blades up completely. Anyway, we get this kind of a cone right here, and I'll take and I'll spin that inside that paper, kind of pushing towards it a little bit. And what that'll do is it'll deburr inside of this ring. And we'll go into in just a moment how important that is, in my opinion, why that's important. So I'll turn that a little bit more, get on the other side. So now we have a decently, I need to do that just a little bit more on that ring. And the way this prop balancer works, really you only need to deburr one side completely. The other side, it doesn't really matter so much because it's going to be inside the hub. Okay, now that I've got that pretty clean, deburr free, I'm going to stick it just right into this hub. Okay, and as we can see, there's a little bit of deburrs on the inside of that. So I'll just take this sandpaper and try to knock some of that off on the inside of that. And I'll show you why here just in a minute, why I do that. Okay, so we're going to stick this prop ring or adapter in there. And I don't know if you can see this, probably not, but the biggest issue that I found with some of these prop rings is when I push this right here, I don't know if you can see it, but it's actually what it's doing is moving inside the prop. It's got a little bit of slack back and forth. And what happens when you stick this on your motor, these actually fit the shafts. This right here fits the shafts of the motor really pretty tight. In fact, I almost got to press them on, which I think is a plus. But with this prop ring in here not fitting this hub perfectly, and what I mean by perfectly is a couple of thousandths press fit. You know, if you tighten this down and this ring is kicked off to the one side, well, you know, automatically that is going to throw everything out of balance, and which is why we're going to get into some dynamic balancing and how that's going to help that. So what I've had to do, and it occurred to me that I'm going to have to shim these out because they don't fit just perfectly. And this one actually fits, out of the four that I've done, this one actually fits the best. So what I did to get a past that, because what we're going to have to do is make sure that this fits in this tight. Even if it is a little bit off one way or the other, the main thing we can't have having happen to us is it shift during installation onto the prop. Wherever this we put in here needs to stay there and cannot move, even if it is, like I say, just a little bit out of center. But the technique that I've used, and believe it or not, is tissue paper. So what I do is I cut a square of this tissue paper out here. Get some more excess off. Then what I do is I lay this. Try to get it in the shot here so you can see it. Don't have a tripod yet for my camera, but I'm going to have to invest in one, I think. Anyway, I'm going to put this in here. Let's see if I can aim this camera a little better towards the bottom. Okay, we'll come out here so we can see what we're doing. Lay the tissue paper in the hub. Then I'm going to take the prop ring and I'm going to lay the prop ring right into the center of the hub. I'll go ahead and move the camera here so we can see better. So what we got, so I'm going to take and push this prop ring down in there just like that. You can see how it's kind of taking up the slack. And then I try to bring this tissue paper up and around so that it kind of helps sucks it in. And this essentially, what this is going to do is be my shim between the prop hub and the prop adapter ring and taking out any of the slack that may be in there. And you're maybe thinking, well, that's not much slack. Well, let me tell you something. It makes a huge difference, especially when you go into dynamic balancing, because you can balance the props on your stand, but when you put them on your motors, you got to balance those too, because if they're not running perfectly true, it causes vibrations. Even though your prop is perfectly balanced, it's not perfectly balanced on the motor shaft itself. So getting this as close to center as possible will alleviate a whole lot of problems when you're trying to dynamically balance them on the quad. So anyway, like I say, I push this down, and I kind of help this tissue paper out as I push it down to make sure that it goes down inside the hub as much as possible. I'm going to set the camera back down. I'm going to go ahead and push this in, and I tend to use the end of an X-Acto knife, just kind of try to push evenly so that it goes down completely and evenly into the prop hub. Now, the next thing is most people would have a tendency just to pull this out and rip it. Well, I wouldn't do that, because if there are places in here that it isn't grabbing tight, as in if it's not perfectly a circle, it may be not grabbing the tissue paper here just right, or as tight as other places. So what I would do to keep from pulling the paper out is I would just take a really sharp X-Acto knife and just cut the tissue paper away from it instead of pulling it out, just in case it doesn't grab as tight in other places. It needs to get dull pretty quick, because you need something that's extremely sharp. So I'm going to go ahead and grab another one, throw that one to the side and use it again later on something else. Okay, now I'm going to cut this. Try to cut this out of here. Okay, so what we're left with is the little bit of tissue paper. And I'm back. Sorry about that. Memory card was full on me. I must have grabbed the wrong one when I started. But anyway, where we left off was I was cutting the remainder of this tissue paper out, and once I get it pretty close, what I do next is I take some more sandpaper and I lay this prop down, and I just want to make sure that with any molding imperfections, that I make this nice and flat across here, because this is where it's going to sit on your motor. I want it to be set flat as possible. Okay, and then I'll reach in here on the other side and I'll cut the tissue paper out again. And this is where it comes in, where you got to have a really sharp razor blade to do this, because I don't want to tear it out, I want to cut it out. Okay, now that we've got that, we're ready to start balancing. Okay, so the way I use my Durobro prop balancer is, these are the pieces that we have. Somewhere I've got a spring and a little silicone keeper, those pieces there. Okay, when I first started prop balancing, what I did is I put on here just like this, with the two angle parts like that, and then I realized that was getting it off a little bit, because, and this just goes into where this prop ring, getting this prop ring in here as close to center as possible is so important, because when you put this in here like this is going to center it in that prop ring. Well, if your prop ring is a little bit different than the hub, and then you put this in here like this, well, instead of being in a true square and perpendicular with the cone here with this prop ring, and you stick it on this side, and I'm going to give a demonstration. What I mean is, if this inside's off from this side, essentially what it's going to do is pull your prop crooked like this, and this is over exaggerating, but you can see what I'm talking about. So if this side isn't perfect with this side, essentially what you get is a prop crooked like this. So this is why when I put this on, I actually flip this over and put flat against the hub here, because this is where, you know, my the prop washer or the motor washer and nut seats at, so that it's pushing flat against the cone in there. And this is why, another reason why I sanded the inside of the ring really good is so that there wasn't any deburrs in that. So what I want to do now is what I normally do is I push this cone into that prop ring just a little bit to make sure that it seats in there, you know, somewhat evenly. And then we'll go ahead and install the spring and the silicone. Now the silicone rubber looks a little different. What I had to end up doing is take a piece of heat shrink tubing, because it was wanting to expand on me and slipping on this, so I put the heat shrink on that to help keep it from coming out. And I think there's supposed to be a washer here. My kit for some reason didn't come with a washer, but it'd be good if it had one. But anyway, I make sure that I've got this in there good, even and flat. Okay, then it's time to put it on the balancer. Adjust camera angle a little bit so we can see. There we go. Try to get all this in the shot. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to balance this way with the prop. As you can see, it dips really hard this way. Make sure I check it again in the other direction. Same way. So what it's telling me is this side of the blade right here is heavy. I'm going to go ahead and turn it around. This is a lot of what I do. It's all about tolerance, what you consider tolerance, because you know, I'll explain a little bit more as we go, as in what I mean by tolerance of when you release the blade, how much does it move before it stops? Does it stay perfectly? You know, what is your acceptable tolerance when you balance these blades? But anyway, this is obviously the heaviest side. So what I do first, and I definitely recommend doing, is whatever blade is the heaviest, I mark it so that I don't lose track which one I'm sanding on. Because sometimes if you sand a little bit too much on this blade, the only way to fix that is to sand a little bit on this blade. And you don't want to confuse yourself on which one you're sanding on. So what I like to do is I'll take and I'll mark it right here with a Sharpie, just so that I know what side that I originally started on. So now that we've confirmed that that's the heavy side, I'm going to start sanding on this. But before I go to sanding on this, what I want to do first, kind of getting ahead of myself here, is there, just like with the prop rings, you have the molding edging. There's actually a little bit of molding edging on these props right here. And I have found that if you take this off first, make it nice and smooth, and take this little bit of lip, I don't know if you can see that little bit of a lip of plastic right there. If you take that off, I've generally found that props balance out a little bit better when you take that off. So I'll just go ahead and grab my sandpaper, and I will probably fast forward through parts of this so that you don't have to be completely bored with me sanding, because no one likes watching anybody sand. Don't like doing it myself, but like I said, this has been the best results that I've had from prop balancing is actually sanding them instead of using the tape and hot glue method. Okay, so now that I've got the edges sanded fairly smooth, took the rest of the little excess of molding that was left on that, go ahead and put this back on. So I've already got my black mark. I know what side's going to be the heaviest. It's that side there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start sanding. And I sand on the bottom side. Move the camera a little bit so you can see. On the bottom side here. Just be careful when you do this that you don't remove too much material, because believe it or not, a lot of times it doesn't take as much as what you think to actually get it balanced out. I'll put it back on here and see what we got. Still falling. I'm going to sand quite a bit because it's going to take a little bit. when I sand this, I'm sanding more towards the end. Of course, the more off the end you take, the less material you'll have to take, because it's going to be, the leverage on it. The more you take off on the ends, the more result that you'll get. But I generally try to take off from about 3/4 of the blade to the tip, and then I try to go from edge to edge when I sand, just to try to make it as even. Not that it matters, but that's just kind of what I do. And one of the things that definitely want to be sure and do is wipe any excess off the blades before you stick them back up here and see where you're at. Still not there. Okay, starting to get pretty close now. I'm going to check both directions, put it in the what I call straight across. Still falling a little bit. Check this side. Still falling a little bit. Sand just a little bit more. Starting to get really close now. My tolerance that I call when I sand these is I try to hold the prop perfectly still when I release it. If it doesn't move, I call it good. Now you can probably nudge it a little bit and cause it to go ahead and fall, but if I can set this on the balancer and let go and it stays put, for me that's good enough. Check it both directions. Looks like it might be a little bit heavy on this side, and I like to flip it while I'm doing this, just to see I got a little bit out right there. I'm going to try to reposition it. Now a lot of that is when it goes to fall is because your hub's out of balance, and depending on what side your hub is out of balance can cause this to want to go down like this. So that's why I try to, when I'm initially doing my first part of the balance, that I kind of leave that little bit of a tolerance in there. As long as I let it go and it stays there, at this point of the procedure, I'm going to call that good. So now that we've got it straight across like that, the next thing we want to do is bring one of the blades straight up like this and let it go. So as it falls, of course if I let it keep going, it'll go down and then come back around. It's going to come back around basically to this position. So what that's telling me is that this side of the hub right here, or this side of the blade, is heavier than this side here. So we need to basically balance this side of the prop now. We'll go ahead and flip it a different direction just to make sure that we're getting the same results no matter which way we turn this. Stand it up, and this time I'm going to stand up on this side. As you can see, it's quite a bit. If I stop it right here, it'll probably stop in the center. So what that's definitely what it's telling me is that side's hard. So how do we fix that? Well, I used to, whichever side was the lightest, I would sand it right here and put some hot glue on right here on this spot here. But yeah, it looks hideous. I don't like it. It works. Haven't had any problems with the hot glue coming off, but I don't particularly like the way it looks. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I'm staying balanced, and I'm still drifting a little heavy on this one blade. Looks like I'm going to sand it just a couple more times. You can see just a little bit of sanding does a little bit of difference. Okay, so going on to sanding the heavy side of the blade. So what we're going to do is we're going to, first of all, I'm going to take my Sharpie again, and I'm going to mark on the side of the hub that we're going to be sanding on, just so that I don't get confused. My daughter comes in here and bugs me sometimes, and if I set something down and go attend to her or whatever, I kind of forget where I was at. So that's something I always did, just kind of help peace of mind so that I know where I'm sanding. So what we're going to do is I'm going to stand this blade up, trying not to mess with the hub, keep that, without being moved. I'm going to sand, get this a little better in the shot. I'm going to sand this edge here, trailing edge on this side, and I'm going to kind of do it in a circular, or back and forth like this, so that I'm leaving the blade nice and rounded and not flat or sharp on one side. I used to count how many times I did this, and then when I flipped the blade over, I did the exact same amount of times. I counted. But when you start doing it enough, or get used to it, you can kind of figure out how much you need to sand as you're doing it. And again, be sure you knock all the excess dust off, because it will change your results. What I need to get is an automotive tack rag. I meant to get one today and I didn't get around to it. Okay, so we're going to set this back up here. And we know this is the side we sanded on because of our mark. So I'm going to put this here. And a lot of times when I do this, I do balance these props. I do kind of a forward position. First of all, if we initially get this, and anytime you sand on the trailing leading edges here, I would go ahead before you go to the hub part of the balancing, make sure that you haven't sanded too much off of one side and caused this to be out of balance, because if it has, it causes a little bit of an issue. So then in that case you'd have to sand a little bit more on one of the other sides. And it looks like I might be out just a little bit, but like I say, I can get to stay there, so I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the prop up at a 45-degree angle right here. If I can get it to stay, we're good. And it's running around, so that's probably, I'm going to stop it here. So this is telling me that this side of the blade here is still heavy. So if I turn it on this direction here, it's going to fall down that way. So if we spin it all the way around, now even though that this stayed just like this, I wouldn't necessarily call that good. You want to hit all 4 points to make sure you want to be able to stop this in any direction, and basically it won't move. If it moves on you, then you got some more sanding to do in one of the 4 points. So I definitely, and I even flip it around to make sure that I'm producing the same results no matter which way this is sitting on the balancer. So put this here, falls back down. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and sand some more onto this, and I'll come back in just a second. Okay, I think I'm getting pretty close now. It took about 7 or 8 minutes of getting the trailing and leading edge of this side right here sanded. Again, anytime you sand on this, be sure when you throw it back on the balancer that you stay straight across like that. Because if you sand too much on this blade and it causes it to be a little too light, then it kind of throws off your other balancing. Let's see if I can get this camera a little bit better here so we can see the whole thing. There we go. Okay, so we're going to check our 4 points again, bringing this side up, and if I can get it to stay there, I'm happy with that. Try this way. Got it to stay there. And then I'm going to try this direction. Got it to stay there. And then I want to check this way. And got it to stay there. Something else to be cautious of when you're doing this, if you sit really close, if you're a heavy breather kind of like I am, just a little bit of a puff in air like that could cause it to turn. So when you're getting close and you're wanting to see what you're doing, I sometimes hold my breath because I don't want to exhale out on it and it causes it to change direction. So the last thing I do when I do this is I'll give this thing kind of a quick spin on the balancer, and I'll sit there and I'll watch when this thing stops how it acts. Does it just stop dead on where it sets, or does it back off? If it backs off a little bit, I may want to sand on it just a little bit more, depending on how it acts when it comes to a stop. And it backs off. That's not too bad. It's kind of settling down in there. So I'm going to call that a fairly decent balanced prop. Go ahead and check everything one more time before we call it good and off the balancer. This direction. Check this direction. I still think I have a little bit of out on this, just a little bit. So we can flip this over and get the same results. That's good. That's good. That's good. Got just a little bit of down on this. I think I may have sanded a little bit too much on this one blade. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly take just a little bit off the opposite side there. See if that kind of helps solve that problem. Still a little bit out. Let me put it back over. This all goes back down to what you want to call your tolerances. Are you happy with it if you let go of it, or do you need to nudge it just a little bit and if it doesn't move? But really, the way this balancer works, if you can stop it and it doesn't move, it's going to be pretty daggum close. I mean, I don't know that you can get a whole lot closer. Okay, so now, let me see. So a little bit. I'm going to call it good. That's pretty close. I don't know if I can get it much closer than that. I could probably spend another 10 minutes on it and get it just right dead perfect on, or what I think would be. But this is really close. I'm happy with this. So anyway, next